the most important freedom is mental freedom, more than financial, location, to a degree, like I even think for physical, because everything that we understand about our experience in this world is filtered through our like very unique brain and how it processes information. And no matter what situation we're in or circumstance we're in or status we have in any realm of life, the ability to step outside of the external pressure from others, from society, from the media, from our peers, to push us to think and see and believe certain things, to me is the most paramount freedom. Because from there, what it allows is for us to be actually fearless, to actually feel like we don't have limits, to then pursue the money that we want, the location independence that we want, the circumstances in life that we want, even to a degree the physical freedoms that we want. And this goes back to kind of very cliche sayings around you can't do it if you don't believe it, right? All these mantras around belief and imagining possibility and being able to dream it first before you can make it, like all of those things around making and creating, whether that is wealth or something physical in the world or realizing your dream life, there has to be the mental freedom to imagine, to dream about possibility, to consider what is a vision that you might have about the world that you live in or the life you live or the way you live it, in order for you to then pursue the finances and the wealth, the assets and the things, the way of living and the lifestyle. All of that comes from this first, being able to be free not only from the external pressures that constrain us, but our internal ones as well, around self-doubt, lack of self-belief, not trusting ourselves, feeling like an imposter, feeling like we're not good enough, feeling like a failure. Like all of those things contribute to what we then are able to see as possible in this world. And so the mental freedom to free ourselves from expectations externally is just as important as us being able to free ourselves from our own internal, not only expectations, but judgment. Because we're often our own harshest critic. The way we talk to ourselves can be excruciatingly cruel. And so it's a job that requires the work going out as well as in. But so often we pursue the outcomes first, like a certain amount of money to be made, a certain status in society. And what I mean by that is just even amongst our peers, even for our families, right? Getting a certain degree, getting into a certain school, entering a certain company, achieving a certain title, or even starting your own business and making X amount of dollars, whatever it may be. There's this sense of needing to get to certain goals that we set. And then so often, the amount of rich, wealthy people that end up talking about how they're doing their self-discovery journeys, how they're finding myself, how they were depressed, how they were all of these negative, maybe physical, but largely emotional and mental experiences, because this wasn't whole. Not to say it wasn't strong in some ways, because to get to the success that they got to, it certainly enabled them in some ways. But so often the work is done in the reverse. It's like, let me achieve these things. And then when we realize so often, and this is like a movie trope at this point, and you've seen it in so many different stories, is people go for the thing. They get the gold medal. They make the $1 billion. They achieve whatever they go public. They achieve whatever status in society. They have the partner, kids, house, and they're like, why the fuck am I not happy? And then it becomes the inward journey. And so much of our life, we're trained to be oriented around the external journey of things we can point to that we have done with our lives. And a select few might be like, fuck that, I'm starting with the internal journey. I'm going to make sure I'm solid. I'm going to make sure that I'm fulfilled, that I find meaning. And then I can, like, along the way, worry about the other stuff. But the other stuff doesn't trump, and by other stuff, I mean the money, the status, the things. It doesn't trump the self. But so often, and we're also trained to be oriented around all the external things, all the superficial things. And then at some point, when we've got enough of those things that are giving us the signal that somehow something is still missing, then we go inward. And people talk about how painful that journey is, how they've, just spent a decade, 2, 3, striving for the same thing, and yet they've missed out on family time, being with their loved ones, their partners, their kids, or just living life, right? Feeling alive because they chased something so blindly, or maybe not blindly, but with such singular focus and such tunnel vision. And then you kind of go through this like crumbling phase of like identity crisis. And who am I? Shut it all down or blow it all up, cheat on your partner, like get a divorce, break up your family, or break up with your business partner, lose your whole business. You built this whole thing, it came crashing down, or you realize you built this whole thing, you don't want to do it anymore, you just shut it down. Whatever it may be that the striving was oriented around, inevitably there is the coming back to you, because ultimately we're still the ones that have to live that life. And while we can be preoccupied for a while with the striving to make that money or to get a certain, lifestyle in place, doesn't change the fact that once the things quiet down, once we stop striving, even just for a little bit, and we don't have a whole bunch of noise to fill the void is still there, right? And if we haven't done this work and freeing this, then the void becomes almost unbearable. And hence people go on these journeys, right? Why now ayahuasca retreats are so popular and booked out, and everybody's opening one up in Costa Rica or some other beautiful place. So many people are trying to find healing through like ketamine therapies and all this other stuff. And I'm not saying that by themselves they're bad. It's just the amount of time and money that's then spent towards trying to solve a much deeper issue with symptomatic solutions isn't really going to solve the actual problem, because it's a much deeper self problem. And it's a much deeper, mental and emotional experience problem. And so I don't posit that people should change their goals, because they have their goals for their reasons, and, they know why they're chasing them, I hope. But I would just ask you to consider, what would life be like if you could operate from a place of full freedom of your mind and your emotions, that you could navigate whatever situation you're in, whatever person you're with, and build your life given the money you want to make, the lifestyle you want to live, the people you want to be around, how you want to live, but first and foremost in accordance with you, and a clear understanding of what meaningful, fulfilling, and impactful living entails for yourself. Because with that, you can then go navigate the making of the money very freely. Because so many people who pursue trying to make a lot of money butt up against limiting beliefs around money and whether they are worthy, and the insecurity of not having it maybe when they were growing up, or the feeling of lack and the feeling of not enoughness. Because then all those things will affect your decision making when you are pursuing that money goal. And the difficulty, the mental difficulty and emotional difficulty that arises in pursuing that goal may steer you in the wrong direction or bring, I'm just going to broadly call them like thoughts around insecurity into your decision making, into your doing and execution. And even if you do achieve it, it can be a really kind of stressful process along that way. Not to say that making money isn't stressful in general, but it's just the added stress and anxiety of our own shit coming into it. And so what I'm positing is, what if we just spent a little bit more time on this first and on this first and freeing this first before we pursue the financial independence and freedom and the location independence and freedom? Like, imagine a world where like more of us operated from a place of security in ourselves, a freedom from expectations and what all the shoulds of society, as well as our own doubts about ourselves. And being able to be fully like mentally free to then pursue making money, building the lifestyle, getting the things that we want, pursuing the people and relationships that we want. Because we're then operating from a much more healed state, a much more whole state. It's not just the part of ourselves that feels insecure about money or wants money that's driving things. It's the part of us that's actually free from our insecurities about money and free from our insecurities about not being or having enough, who is then pursuing making money. Because how you then approach that process is going to be much freer as well. And your ability to imagine possibility is going to be much wider and much more open. And your ability to then imagine solutions and imagine paths forward is also going to be that much more creative because you're free. You're not limited or bound by the constraints that you have set upon yourself as well as what society has set upon you. You still have to deal with the realities of constraints. So you can't spend $1 million you don't have unless you want to take on debt. But the paths that you can imagine will not be constrained by, quite frankly, imaginary things, right? Because our doubts are imagined. Our insecurities might come from a real place, but how they manifest then in our lives and how we allow it to affect ourselves is imagined. It's a story that we've told ourselves to the point where we believe it. But if we can make that happen, we can make the opposite happen. We can make freedom happen. We can make limitless belief happen. We can make creativity and possibility happen for ourselves in the same way that we constrained ourselves by believing that we couldn't or we shouldn't or that we weren't able. And so this is not like suggesting there's a right way. It's just putting forth the consideration that maybe there is another thing we should be thinking about and solving for as we pursue the progress that we want, the achievements that we want, the lifestyle that we want, and the money that we want. That there's another component to like really unlock and let ourselves be free of, so we can just be our real selves as we pursue. Actually, not just be our real selves, be our freest real self as we pursue making that money, striving for these achievements, creating the successes that we want. It doesn't necessarily have to change the game. In terms of the game you're trying to play, you can still pursue the things, but it's a total game changer in terms of how you go about it and how you pursue it. Because if you value like freeing you as much as you value attaining financial freedom or location freedom, then once you actually achieve those things, you Won't have to go backwards like all the, rich people who talk about needing to then go back and like figure this out. If you do that along the way, as you're doing it, you get to enjoy it more and be more liberated in the doing. And as you achieve it, you'll be able to fully like embody it more and appreciate it, because there isn't then this void and this stuckness that's still happening like internally.